manifesting inner wisdom so that you can create the life of your design and enjoy more peace, more vitality, and thrive. That's our topic today. So first off, I'd like you to understand a term that you've heard many, many times. In fact, I think it's been overused: mindfulness. If we go back, turn the clocks back to 1973, a couple of years after I started in this field, John Kabat-Zinn at the University of Massachusetts Medical School defined mindfulness as paying attention in a very specific way on purpose and in the present moment, meaning we're not worrying about what's to come in the future and we're not regretting what we did or didn't do in the past. And free of judgment, which means allowing ourselves to not be perfect, that we do the best we know how to do. So how does this relate to manifesting inner wisdom? Well, think about it. Whatever we pay attention to, we give energy to. And whatever we give energy to will grow and multiply. It's called, that goes way back, the law of attention. And you've heard this expressed so many different ways. Change your point of view, you change your life. So let's just take a quick peek at that, and then we'll explore these tips. Why is that so important? First off, we do need to identify problems. We do need to, as you know, understand the current challenges, the realities that we're facing, the difficulties. But we don't want to what? Make it any worse than it is already. And we don't want to ruminate on it and worry. I've often said, you've heard me say before, worry's like a rocking chair. It gets us nowhere, but it gives you something to do. The danger with worry is that it's fear-based. And if we go into fear mode, now, for example, there are rational fears, of course, concerns. We don't want to go walk out in the middle of the street when there's heavy traffic. We don't want to be walking around unprotected in the middle of a pandemic. But there comes a point, doesn't there, where we have to be careful about this, and I know it's not easy to get so caught up in fear, the what if this happens, or what if that happens, that we create what? Anxiety. And that anxiety, again, which is fear-based, can go into what? A mild depression, can contribute to stress hormones increasing so much in the body that we have sleepless nights or have difficulty staying asleep, that we find ourselves with a constant state of vigilance, worried what's going to happen next, will we be okay? So again, yes, pay attention to the challenges, the difficulties, just not make it any worse by worrying about it, ruminating on it, because that will put us into fear. And when we go into fear, that has to do with the protective parts of the brain. That's about protection. It's not about attraction. It's not about growth. It's not about making progress. It's not about learning. It's all about survival and security protection, which, of course, sometimes we need. When it comes to manifesting, though, if we go into scarcity consciousness, which is fear-based, again, that's protection mode, it's not attractive. And what happens more so is, as we get stressed, physiologically, the blood vessels get constricted and less blood goes to the brain, less oxygen goes to the brain, stress hormones increase, and it's a whole comedy of errors, because then we cut off cognition, we cut off our higher thinking functions of the brain, and we cut off inner wisdom, intuition, and we go into worry mode. I'm sure you can understand this. We've all been there and done that. So the key is, what can we do to, yes, pay attention to the problems, the challenges, and not let it take over us in such a way that we succumb to the fears and go into a survival state that means we're just going to kind of exist. So I have a couple of tips and things that you can do. Fairly simple, not always easy, agreed with that. So the first step is law of attention. Whatever we give attention to, we give energy to. And whatever we give energy to will grow and multiply. So therefore, once we've identified the problem, the concern, the challenge, the difficulty, the first step is to maintain balance. And we maintain balance by, excuse me for being repetitive. You've heard this so many times. You know this. Breathe. Slowly and deeply. That is the first step of taking control of the autonomic nervous system, regulating consciously your breathing. And when you do that, you'll release more dopamine, more serotonin, and it'll help you to navigate with more grace and ease the challenges. It'll help you to be more responsive rather than reactive. When we're reactive, we have that knee jerk. I mean, have you ever done that? And you wish you hadn't said what you said? Those knee-jerk reactions, or when people are in anger, there's a saying, never make a decision, an important decision when you're angry, because chances are you're not going to think from your heart, you're not going to think with inner wisdom, you're not going to access your intuition and or your higher thinking functions, and we're going to react like an animal. So first step, you got to maintain your poise and your calm. So the slow breathing can help. If it's appropriate to close your eyes, even better yet. In fact, I highly recommend that you make a practice of daily relaxation and focusing, or call it meditation. Eyelids closed when it's convenient and safe to do that. A few slow, deep belly breaths. And what's your intention? What is it that you want to do? And ask the question, as you recognize the difficulty of the challenge, okay, now how can we turn this around? How can I, ask yourself, how can I turn this around? How can I manage this most effectively? Or maybe you need to ask the question, what do I need to learn? Or do I need some training? Or do I need some coaching? Whatever it might be that's appropriate, that gets us thinking in a solution-oriented manner. We're looking to solve the problem and not wallow in it. You've noticed it's one of the challenges with the news. They report what's wrong, they report what's going on, but it's on a 24/7 news cycle. And if we're watching it throughout the day, we're hearing a constant barrage of repetitive information that you'd have to be a saint. You'd have to be an avatar not to go into worry mode. So another tip might be minimize the amount of watching the news, especially the repetitive aspects of the news. Second step is pay attention to what it is you want. Be clear about your intention and focus on that as you're asking these questions. So a quick example for you. It's a simple example, and yet it was a game changer for me. If you've been following my work, my name happens to be Ken Coscia. I've been doing this work since 1971 as a Silva Method instructor. I'm the lead instructor, most experienced. It's been a pleasure and a joy. And in my heart, I'm a teacher. I'm on a mission to help humanity to evolve, as Jose Silva would say. He was the founder of the program. To provide people the skills, the tools, and the techniques to truly take command of their lives. And we do it in a course called the Silva Life and Intuition System. Typically, I do it in an immersion format. Well, starting way back in 1971, I was still a full-time student, never ran a business, never had, quote, a real job, although I wouldn't call it a job, it's more of a life's work, a mission, if you will. Man, I made my share of mistakes. And one of them was, I knew every bit of revenue coming in, what I could expect, and what was going out, what bills to pay. And I found myself paying attention to it, and if things were not going so well, if business dropped off or the revenue wasn't there, I found myself going into, I admit, worry mode. As a kid growing up, I was raised by parents who lived through the Depression. I was raised by parents who didn't have a pot to pee in, as they say. And it wasn't until I was about 8, I'm the youngest of 4 children. Frankly, I had it the easiest, because around the age of 8, my dad started doing a lot better. But prior to that, we lived in a building that was condemned. We lived, and they were getting baskets and help. My father had 4 jobs. And every single night, I can still hear his head. He talked about money and just had all sorts of negative things to say. I won't even go there. Well, when I took ownership of that and recognized that and said, hey, I got to change this, I'm in a stuck pattern, I stopped paying attention to all those numbers. I gave it to my partner, happens to be my wife, and asked her to handle all the bills. And all I started asking was, are we paying all the bills? Are we able to save at least 15% of our gross revenue? Is there money left over? Are we able to donate to the charities we like and have disposal? And if the answer was yes, I was happy. I didn't go any further. And as soon as I gave that up and stopped paying attention to the numbers and all the, I mean, I know it's important, don't get me wrong, but for me, when I stopped focusing on that, it was almost like magic. Things started happening. Opportunities appeared that were probably there before that I paid attention to, and began to grow the business in such a way that I could offer more value to people. I could be of more service, etc., etc. You get the idea? So it's a simple principle, and yet it's profound how it can affect us in our lives. Second step is, one of the biggest challenges we all face today or any time is, what's to come in the future? Will everything be okay? You know, will we survive this? I mean, there's a lot of doom and gloom kind of predictions out there, and some of them are based on science, and some of them are based on reality. And do your work, do your research, and get different perspectives, because even with all the doom and gloom, it's an opportunity to reset. It's an opportunity for humanity to reset and recognize what's no longer sustainable on this planet, in this global community, and what change is needed. And if we live up to it, and if we measure up and make those necessary changes, things will probably be a whole lot better than ever before. So it's really up to you and I. It's really up to the community as a whole. So the challenge is not having a clear, hopeful, optimistic future identity. And we get caught up in fear, worrying about what's to come in the future. So therefore, what I'd like to see you start doing, I highly recommend, I use these very principles in my life all throughout now I'm in my 50th year career all throughout. I teach this in my Silva Method classes. I work with my coach clients whom I mentor with this. And these principles work. So during the day, the first tip was, take short pauses throughout the day. Eyelids closed when it's safe and convenient. 3 slow, deep belly breaths, and reaffirm your commitment to whatever your intention is. Then, during the day, practice, well, let's add one, some gratitude. I know everybody suggests that. It's important, especially today. When you practice expressing some gratitude, appreciation for anyone or anything in your life, it puts you into a state of abundance, because you're recognizing what you have, you're appreciating what you have, even if it's just a little bit. The surest way to have more is to first appreciate what you do have. And then third, work on your future identity. How? Especially when an eyes closed. Meditation, or even just a simple eyes closed process. Begin to imagine your best self emerging today, tomorrow, next week, next month, in the months and years to come. And if indeed your best self is emerging, what would that mean? What will you be able to do? What will you accomplish? How will you perform? How will you live? What will your health be like? Get the idea? And do it with an emotion as if it's happened already. So you want to play with some creative visualization or mental rehearsal, whatever you want to call it. And if you're not so visual, you can just think it. More importantly, feel it as if it's happened already, your best self emerging in all that you do. And I recommend you do this with your eyelids closed. For example, you notice this chart behind me. It's something that was developed by Jose Silva many years ago, actually between 1944 and 1966, before we went public. Long story short is we recognize that beta being our normal waking state in terms of brain waves. Very simple. I'm just looking at it very simply, overview. The green and the red, alpha and theta, represent our sleep state or daydream-like state. And delta, the black on the chart, slow wave or deep sleep. Well, the long story short again here is, now when we take people who've been meditating for decades and we monitor the brainwaves, or we take a Silva Method trained student, we monitor the brainwaves, we find that when they're in this state we call level, they've basically caused their brainwaves to slow down, much like it does very naturally and very easily during the day while we're daydreaming, taking a nap, or sleeping, except we do it consciously. Meaning we stay awake, we stay alert. We recognize it's a wonderful feeling, by the way. I admit I'm addicted to it. I've been practicing these principles every day of my life since June 1, 1971, when I first got started. And what you're opening up, you're accessing the so-called subconscious, these inner conscious states of mind and being, where we learn so much faster. It's a state of being where we learn faster, we learn easier, because we're more open to possibilities, we're more open to suggestions. And that's key. And I would add, I want you to start doing this, practicing. Even if you have not been through the Silva training or you have not meditated before, just in a simple way, eyelids closed, few slow deep breaths. Imagine your future, first feel some gratitude, feel some gratitude. Appreciation, what's your intention, and imagine your best self emerging. And when you get into that state successfully, I know, take some training, be patient, that's when the magic, so to speak, starts to happen. So take your time, be patient. So do follow this, and remember, my hope for you is that you will do good, make a difference. We need more and more people doing good on this planet, making a difference, innovating, helping to solve problems. Have lots of fun while you're doing it, and thrive.